Sweet dreams are made of this. Who am I to disagree? I've traveled the world and the seven seas. Everybody is looking for something. So welcome back to evaluating dream analysis, part of the psychodynamic approach, the therapy that we were discussing. And in this third part, we'll be looking at evaluating the ethics of this as a therapy. So, that's the big question. Is it an ethical thing to do? Is it a right way to treat people? And so, at the end of this video, you should be able to evaluate the ethical issues around dream analysis. So that's really what you're going to be focusing your note-taking on. You'll be thinking, okay, identifying what the issues are and what you think of them. Okay, and we'll say a little bit more about that as we go along. Okay, so you might have thought of some already, and if you want to pause and have a little think about that, challenge yourself. That's absolutely fine. Otherwise, I'm going to plough on. And here are some of the issues that are involved. So it takes quite a while. I believe in America the standard length of time for analysis is 2 years, so people would see a therapist for a couple of years, and it's expensive. It's an expensive therapy. Can certainly over £60 an hour or whatever in England, and that can go up and up and up. So it's expensive, so it's not going to be available for everyone, and it takes a long time. It's not available on the NHS, which therefore means that it's only going to be available for rich people, and you might wonder why, if that's a fair thing to think about. Okay, CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, which we've looked at already, may be a better choice in the sense that it's often limited to, say, 10 or 12 sessions. And so it's less of a financial burden on people, and that can be referred to, but it can be available on the NHS for certain things. Okay. So yeah, we've said it. So it seems to be dream analysis only seems to be accessible to people with money, and another criticism is that it's open to abuse. Some people argue that it's in the therapist's interest to keep therapy going for months and months and months, because they're on a good hourly rate. There's a good joke about that, which I'm going to hang on to until I see you in class. And if you've been watching this carefully, you'll probably remember, because you know how hilarious my jokes are. So I would make a note now and say, must ask Mr. Haggerty the joke about therapy. Okay. What do you think about this? And again, there's a bit of space on your handout to be thinking about this. Why could it be argued that there is a power imbalance in the therapist-client relationship? Yeah, for pretty much all the therapies that we've looked at, and the vast majority of therapies that you will come across, we talk about a partnership between the client and the therapist. So the client comes along ready to try their hardest to do their best to deal with their problem, and the therapist is there to give them guidance and all the rest of it. So how could we argue that there's a power imbalance in this one? You might want to pause that and fill that bit in. Another key issue. Oh, I know, actually, just finish off the power imbalance one then. So there will be issues like over dependence on the therapist, so the client doesn't really act on their own behalf. They want to know, they want guidance, and they want the therapist to tell them what to do and so forth. Now is that right? Is it right that therapists should have that amount of power over someone, and is it really helpful? On the other hand, we could argue that we all need experts to help us from time to time, and maybe that's really all that's happening in therapy. But you make that decision yourself, okay? False memory syndrome is an issue. So thinking about your memories, some of the things that you remember, are you absolutely sure? I've got a personal false memory issue. If any of you are familiar with the actor Noel Clarke, who's made films like Kid Hood and who was in Doctor Who as an assistant, and so he was in Doctor Who anyway. Well, I taught him, and I taught him in a school in London, and I met him many years later in back up in London, and he said, I said, do you remember that I taught you and everything? And he did, but I thought I taught in two different schools in London, and I thought I taught him in the other school, and I could actually picture him wearing the uniform of a school that he had never been to. How strange is that? So there's my false memory. You may have a few of your own, or you may have heard of these, and that's just the way life goes. However, Elizabeth Loftus has done quite a lot of research into that, and it can have quite serious consequences. Because if what we're doing, if we are actually in therapy trying to find out these memories that have been repressed, have been buried in the unconscious, once we've got things to surface, or once we've interpreted our dreams, for example, and found out what's going on in the unconscious, how do we know if the memories are true? And there is evidence that false memories can be implanted by a therapist, not deliberately necessarily, but we can accidentally do it. If we interpret a dream wrongly as a therapist, and the client goes along with that, they can actually come to believe that something really happened that didn't. Particularly painful and all the rest of it around issues of abuse and stuff like that in early childhood. And if clients are falsely remembering stuff like this can cause massive distress to clients and their families. So you had there's a very important case involving Loftus and Nicole Taus, who was badly affected. False memories that had somehow got into her mind during therapy caused her to be alienated from her mother for a long time, which is really sad. But it's worth looking that up. There's references to that in your handout as well. Okay. Another ethical issue is that maybe by focusing simply on childhood and the unconscious, we ignore other aspects of a person's life. So if someone comes to therapy age 30 or 40 or 20, there may be issues happening at the moment that need dealing with, perhaps. And one argument is that what's wrong with dream analysis and psychoanalysis generally is that it's ignoring all of that and just focusing on what's happened in the past. So that is a problem, but also, and possibly a deeper problem with just focusing on the past, is that very often not an awful lot can be done to change things that have happened in the past, and as a result of that, maybe what's happened is that we bring all these things to the surface, even accurate memories. If we bring some accurate memories to the surface of some kind of pain or suffering that's happened during childhood, then it's almost like harming the client again, because there's no real way of solving that issue. So you might want to think about how that could happen, how people would come to emotional harm during a dream analysis session. A little bit of TV watching for you to finish. The TV series Frasier, series 4, episode 3. Really interesting idea about two psychiatrists trying to interpret a dream. If anyone hasn't seen that series, it's very good, very funny series. Okay. That concludes our look at dream analysis. We've looked at three sections in 3 different videos. I'll set the work to go along with that on Classroom when I've saved this and got it all posted up. Okay, nice to see you, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye then. Oh, and there's a couple of possible things that you could be doing. That's yeah, they would be useful things to do, but I'll mention it again in classroom.